This is Koshal, Secure Guard Consulting. Today's conversation is on securing Microsoft 365. So if you've done an audit with us from kind of April onward last year and this year so far, you'll see we're doing a deeper dive as part of the general controls review into 365. So fundamentally, we don't feel like it should be a separate audit. It should be included in there. And so today is going to cover a lot of the things that we're going to be looking at. I'm also going to kind of show conditional access policy, some of the new things that we've seen in there. I'm just going to dig in. Hopefully, everybody on the call can take something of value. Okay, these are the types of licenses that we typically see. We'll see business standard. I'm not exactly sure what the name of business standard is, so I'm just calling it business standard. Gets you the basic security defaults if you have that checked and on by default. You can manage access to OWA individually. The problem is it's unclear for how long that'll be available, right? That like MFA and individual assignment of things. Microsoft is more and more trying to push customers towards business premium and up. And then once you get into business premium, they keep trying to push you further up. But business premium is the one that is the bare minimum of what we want to see banks have. Lets you go beyond security defaults and control authentication and better access controls through conditional access policies. So adding P2 licensing gives you the ability to build conditional access policies to handle risky user behavior or risky sign-ins. So kind of anomaly detection. And then E5, we don't have a lot of banks using. We have a few banks using E5, and they're definitely it's everything under the sun. It's everything Microsoft really has to offer there. So at a minimum, we want to see business premium. Right? Business premium allows you to do conditional access policies, create named locations or trusted IPs, block access outside of trusted IPs, just govern access in a better way to protect against the hacks that are out there. And so some licensing gaps, technically you can have every user in the bank on business standard, or what I'm calling business standard, the basic package, and then one license for business premium, and you'll get the ability to do a conditional access policies. Similarly, you can be business premium and do a P2 licensing on one account and get risky sign-in abilities. Both would not be considered compliant, right? So they'd be not compliant with Microsoft licensing terms, and really Microsoft audit could cause issues. So we don't recommend rolling the dice on this. Anecdotally, we've heard of at least one situation where the MSP itself was penalized, so loss of partner benefits for the MSP, and then risk of license true-ups. So license true-up would be being forced to purchase licenses retroactively. So if you have questions on how to deal with that, you can put conditional access policies that only apply to certain users, but I mean, you're getting very granular at that point. So really, business premium at a bare minimum is what we say. So some attack vectors, and so this is kind of summary. I think everybody on the call probably understands these. The traditional attack vector, credential harvesting. Hacker sends a phish with a link, so a phish or an email phishing attack with a link to a page where it asks for credentials. Someone gives those credentials, and then the hacker uses those credentials to get into M365 if there's no MFA or anything in place. Password spraying attacks. You take 1, 2, or however many common passwords there are. So winter 2024, exclamation point, summer 2021, exclamation point, right? So there's some common passwords that are just out there that a lot of places use. And so what they would do is they'll use a tool, and I don't have the tool up right now, but they'll harvest the web. They'll use a tool like the Harvester, which is available on Kali, or you can download it separately, or Hunter.io to get email addresses for a bank, or go to your website if you have your bank employees' names listed there, in emails, or go to LinkedIn. Because remember, once we have a pattern for how the email is, it's first initial, last name, or first name at thedomainname.com, we can generate emails from that. What they'll do is they'll use a tool that just sends this one password through on everybody's account, and that's called password spraying. MFA bypass, so Evil Jinx is an example of an MFA bypass attack out there. They are sold in the wild too. Evil Jinx is used by pen testers. So similar to credential harvesting, but instead of just capturing credentials, the purpose is to proxy those to the authentication mechanism. So except tools like EvilGenix will also prevent prompts to capture MFA tokens and ultimately sessions. So I will send this presentation out to everybody who registered for the webinar. So I won't send it out outside of that, and I'll post it out on this is out on the website. So if you go to our website, secureguardconsulting.com, hover over webinars, templates, videos, and choose videos, you'll see a video there. It's on YouTube. It's M365, man in the middle, adversary in the middle, MFA bypass attack. So you can see how EvilGenix works. The basics, though, are hackers get a server, Droplet on DigitalOcean as an example, install EvilGenix. There's EvilGenix 1, EvilGenix 2, EvilGenix 3. Attach a domain to that install. Create the phish. So in EvilGenix case, there, when you create a phishing attack, or the link that goes in the phishing attack, it's called a lure. Then send out the phish, right? So the victim gets the phish, enters their username and password. EvilGenix proxies that username and password to the real site, so to the real authentication mechanism. The real site triggers MFA. EvilGenix proxies the challenge, so that push SMS or whatever the MFA is, back to the victim. The victim completes the MFA and sends it back to the real site. The real site then issues a session token. EvilGenix steals the session token, not just the credentials. So attackers use the token to log in without needing MFA or password. So if you go to so I'm on Google here. If you get an extension, like I have this cookie editor extension, right? And if I go to login.microsoft.com, and this won't necessarily work for them, but let's say I log in there, right? If I click on the cookie editor, there's all this information here, and that's what we would call a session, right? It's once you're authenticated, it's going to look something like that. This is the JSON version of it, right? That's all the hacker needs once you're authenticated to then transfer that to their own browser and log in. So EvilGenix will capture that session token and come in from there. So hopefully that makes sense, everybody. Watch the video. It'll make more sense when you watch the video. Actually, in the video, I use ChatGPT to translate that session that we get through EvilGenix to a cookie. Turns out you don't need to do that. I was new to the tool at the time. Other attack vectors, once the hacker gets username and password, even if there's no MFA at that point, open a mobile phone and log in, or use user agent spoofing. So some steps to use user agent spoofing, you can go to Chrome, right? And so this is something a hacker could do. They'll go and they'll right click, they'll do inspect the page. There's the 3 ellipses here at the top. They'll click on that. And then more tools, network conditions, change user browser defaults. So now I can simulate myself as a BlackBerry device. I can simulate myself as Chrome on Android, right? This is how a hacker, one of the ways they do it. They either do it on their phone or they'll simulate it through here or use an emulator or something like that. You can do different versions of Internet Explorer, right? It's just a tool that's built into Chrome. It might be built into the other tools too, but so I put some instructions in there. So if anybody is not on mute, go ahead and go to mute. That's okay. So I put some instructions on there on how to do that in case you're curious and want to try it out. The other thing they might do is simply open Outlook or some other email utility on a desktop or a laptop and add an account. Or they could go through PowerShell, right? So there's the Graph API via PowerShell, and you'll see some of the scripts we use are using the Graph API and the Exchange Online API. So some examples are Graph API, Connect Exchange API, MS Online Graph, so it's Connect MG Graph, right? Different APIs that can be used, and you can block those as well. And so our recommendation fundamentally is to establish trusted IPs. So external facing IPs of the bank and of the MSP or the network support vendor. Block all Microsoft 365 services outside of those trusted IPs unless they're on a managed and controlled device and have MFA implemented for initial access. Don't allow any OWA capability outside of trusted IPs. So this is the configuration we're pushing pretty heavily during audits, unless you have compensating controls, right? You could be E5 licensed with risky behavior sign-in, and you've tested, capturing MFA bypass attacks with risky sign-ins. One thing about that is I did just upgrade our licensing to P2 licensing. I think it takes a while for Microsoft to realize what the baseline behavior is, but it doesn't stop the Evil Jinx MFA bypass attack just with risky sign-ins. I think it's got to come up with a baseline. So I'll probably send out communication if we find out that it does. But so if you're a bank that has allowed OWA internally, but blocking it externally. I did test this last night using Evil Jinx. So if you're allowing access within a trusted IP, but blocking it outside of those trusted IPs, then the Evil Jinx MFA bypass, as it stands today, won't work. So ultimately, it's trying to authenticate from outside of a trusted IP. So again, as it stands today, there's no predicting the future on these. These attacks are evolving pretty rapidly. So some new things, there's phishing resistant MFA. So I don't have much experience with it. I'm going to start playing around with it. I know it came out a while ago. Phishing resistant MFA, the implementation of it was really clunky. I think at one point you needed YubiKeys, but it's supposed to tie the authentication to the device itself. You can do it through Microsoft Authenticator now. And so once I know more, we might even do a demo on that, or talk to your MSP about phishing resistant MFA. I think they're going to be the best place to talk to. I did run the Evil Jinx MFA bypass attack yesterday morning with a customer who has phishing resistant MFA. So we tried it without phishing resistant MFA. We were able to breach them. We tried it with phishing resistant MFA, and it was impossible. It shut us down. So not that I'm suggesting this, you could open up OWA with phishing resistant MFA if that MFA were tied to a specific device and probably be okay. So there is also an option under sessions, and I'll show that when we get into conditional access policies, that says require token protection for sign-in sessions. It's under preview mode. So I haven't played around with that either, but these are just some options I'm putting out there. And so ultimately, though, with how quickly attacks evolve, why take a chance? Move to one or both of the above and still limit access outside of trusted IPs. Or prove out that you can support it. So okay, so I'm going to jump into the email now. So you should all have gotten this email. Again, if you registered, I see someone putting a message in the chat there. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so in this email, what I've done is, actually, let's do this. Let's go through, I'm going to go into Microsoft 365 conditional access policies, right? So I'm under protection, conditional access. I click on policies. Actually, let's take a step back here just to demo this properly. So I'm in admin. I'm going to create a new user. So number one on this email is, or not number one, A on this email is similar to the network. Global admin accounts should be separate and cloud only, as privileged access should not be assigned to an individual's normal user account. So if I'm an admin at the bank's network, similar to the bank, in a perfect world, should be operating, there should be two different sets of credentials, one for normal use, one for admin use, right? That way, if you get breached during your normal use, it's not having access to everything. So same thing should be done, and you can set that up without licensing changes. So if I do add user, and I say Lester Williams, right? And I say the account is Lester at, so what you would do if you're setting up this account, you would change it from your domain name to your domain name.onmicrosoft.com account. You choose a password, or however your process is on that. Click next, and then you wouldn't assign an account. It's an on Microsoft account, so it can be without a product license. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So click yes, and then this is where, I'm not going to do it in this case, but you would choose admin access center and then give them the proper admin authority. So oddly enough, if you give global admin capability, I think when you go to do Teams things, it doesn't work. So I think you have to add all the administrative capabilities. Like global admin, for whatever reason, doesn't give it across the board. But so you would do that, and then you would go into your account and remove that access. So in this case, I'm just creating a user, Lester Williams. I'm going to finish adding him. I'm going to close it out. So then I'm going to go into conditional access. So if I wanted to get to conditional access from here, I would go into identity. I'd do show all, go into identity. It's amazing here. It's going to open up lots of different things. So if you're not used to it, it's fine. I think you just get used to it and get used to a lot of windows being open and then closing them down and just finding your way through. And so click on protection, then conditional access. So name locations. This is where we'd set up a trusted IP. So I have one in here already, right? But you would do add IP ranges. You give it a name, specify the range. So if you just single IP address, it would be the single IP address /32. Or if you've got a range of IPs, you would put them in there, mark them as trusted or not trusted, and then click save. So in my case, I already have this test internal network. This is our external facing IP for a network of ours. So just remember that would be the same as you having an external facing IP like to your primary branch. It's 209.180.37.163, right? You can even specify countries, right? So that way in conditional access policies, you can exclude certain countries, right? Or you could just choose the United States in here and then block everything else outside of it in conditional access policies. But now let's go to policies. And so let's create a new policy. We're going to do this in report only mode. We're going to call this block Lester from access outside internal network. So obviously you would probably think of a better name than that. I'm going to choose a user and a group. So I'm probably showing this so you see how, if you're not used to seeing how conditional access policies are done, I'm probably showing it. That's the reason why I'm showing it. So you could select no users and then put an exclude in there. In my case, I'm going to choose a block action. So I'm going to choose Lester Williams, right? I'm going to click on Lester Williams. I select it. I'm not going to exclude anybody. We're just going to keep allowing whatever the other policies are in place. This is just to demo it. Then I'm going to go in here to the grant section, and I'm going to say block access. I'm going to choose select, right? Incidentally, if I click on sessions, this is where you see, if you can see this, it says require token protection for sign-in, right? If you do the hover over box, it's in preview mode. It's a secure sign-in session, requires all long-lived tokens, the Microsoft session, Entra session, cookie, and refresh token to be bound to the device using the software key binding or hardware security module binding. So I haven't played around with that yet, but okay. So I've got Lester Williams selected as a user. I'm saying block access. I'm going into network here, and I'm going to say block access. I'm going to say configure block access to any network or location except for, and I'm going to choose my trusted IP there and click save. And so I'm going to keep it in report only mode so it doesn't affect anything. Then I'm going to click create, right? So one of the new features that I've seen, and you just have to play around with this, is, you have to refresh that. Everyone saw I created that, right? Yep, block Lester from outside the network. So when you're in here, you can click View Policy Impact, and it's in preview mode. And if you've had sign-in activity, it should show the sign-in activity and show where it was applied and where it wasn't applied. It's something new. I started playing around with it recently, but worthwhile just taking a look at to see how your policy is being applied across your organization. The other thing is this what if button. So if everyone can see that, it's got new policy from template, upload policy file, and then what if. So if I click the what if button and I choose a user, so I choose Lester Williams, I click select, and I say any cloud app, right? So we're going to say all cloud apps. And then I put an IP address. So remember, there's the trusted IP that I had in there. And so I put in, I'm on a different network right now. So if I put in that IP address and I choose United States, and I say, okay, he's accessing it from a Windows device, and I click what if, right? I'd be looking for that to show up as having applied here. And you can see it's not. So it's one way to test to see it. Did you configure the conditional access policy correctly? And so in my case, I made a mistake on purpose. So if I go back here to block Lester from internal network, turns out I never selected any target resources. So I'm going to choose all resources, click save, and then I'm going to go back into the what if scenario. I'm going to choose Lester again. Click select. I'm put in my IP, choose United States. I'm going to say Windows platform, right? And I'm going to click what if. So you can see it's doing my device authentication flows, blocking legacy authentication, and this is kicking in here. Block Lester from access outside internal network. Hopefully everyone can see that. Per user MFA kicks in as well. And so if I were to choose, what was that IP address? So this is the internal network IP address. So if I was to do a what if scenario for that, you would see it should not get applied, right? You see it's coming from an internal network according to the policy, so it's only applying the ones that apply. So it's a good way of testing what your access would be. And so if I take this, I go back to conditional access there, right? You can choose different platforms. You can say what would happen if they're coming from an Android device, right? In my case, it's going to block it since I did all cloud resources and it's all platforms. So if you see the drop down, Android, iOS, Windows Phone, Windows, Mac, Linux, right? You can also select client apps, so browser, modern authentication, Exchange, Active Sync, supported and unsupported platforms. Microsoft and desktop clients. So desktop clients, that's referring to PowerShell, is really what it's referring to. Command line, PowerShell, those types of things. And then if you have P2 licensing, you can look, how does it show up as far as sign-in risk? But this what if tool is helpful in understanding what's going on. And so, but if you'll see, mine is set to report only mode. Once you have a good idea, then you flip it on if it's working. So I don't know how many of you have seen that what if in there, but you're not going to hurt anything playing with the what if. If you go in here and make a change, then you could hurt something. So you definitely want to, write down what you're doing and keep track of it and coordinate with your MSP, however you're configured there. But the what if is a heavily useful tool. The other caveat in the what if it might be saying, okay, Lester Williams gets caught with this conditional access policy, but then if I go back out to that conditional access policy and I had that set to grant access, right, you need to still make sure the conditional access policy is doing what you think it's doing. So it's going to catch it and show that it's being applied, but you need to make sure that just because you named it block Lester from access outside internal network, that it's not allowing access from the internal network. And so that's what I've kind of given this script for here. So we called it Matt. Matt Loeb with Hardin County Savings Bank spent huge amounts of time testing this with me. And so it stands for Microsoft 365 Conditional Access Triage Tool. It's a PowerShell script. It has to be run in PowerShell 7. So I gave two links to PowerShell 7.5. I gave the 64-bit and the 32-bit. And if you don't know what system you're using, click on this Microsoft window, click System Information, and then look. So I'm X64, right? So that's 64-bit, right? So I would choose this first one. Hopefully that makes sense. So you download the MSI, install the MSI, and then essentially just open this up. Open the script up. You need to have global admin capability. And if you're doing Exchange, you need to make sure an Exchange admin too. Select it all in there. Open PowerShell. Let me go 1 second. It's going to save everything to C temp folder. So we're going to open PowerShell, right? x64 PowerShell 7. It won't work if you run it in PowerShell 5. Run as an admin. And so incidentally, when you do install PowerShell 7, it installs it side by side to whatever you have by default. By default, I think PowerShell 5 point something is installed. And so when you get that, I've copied everything. You just right click and it'll paste it in. Right? So right now, the first time you run this, it could take 4 or 5 minutes for it to do this import module with Microsoft Graph. I probably should have started the process before doing this. But the purpose behind this tool is to bring everything into, you see this, if I want to get an idea of what each of these policies is doing, I'm going to have to click inside of each. And if you've done an audit with this, you've seen us doing that, right? We're having to remember what was happening here with block all outside windows, what's happening in Office Web, and we're having to essentially assimilate that information by going back to various screenshots, right? So this is intended to bring it all down to an Excel document. So the modules it's going to install are the Microsoft Graph module, and it's going to install the import Excel module so it can output it to an Excel. So we'll give that a second here, right? But you're going to see us on our audits. We'll do a combination. If you have simple policies, if there's only 2 or 3 policies and they're taking care of everything, I don't know if we'll run the script or not, but you can run this on your own and then use it as your primary source of documentation, and you can run it periodically. So that ran the script. It does a bunch of things in here. Yeah, but hopefully, Matt, that answered your question there. So if I go out to the C temp folder, so C drive, and then it creates a folder called temp, it's CA_matrix. So if I pull that up, and you might have to select all and do column width so that it comes down to a proper column size. All right, I don't know where column width is at. Column width, I'm going to just say 25 on it, right? So this is how I would do this, right? I would pull this over, and then I would click in cell B2. I would do view, freeze panes, right? So that way you have everything, right? And so if you see this here, it puts it all into one place. So I've got this risk-based, user activity, medium. So these are my risk-based policies, right? Block legacy authentication. I've got all the policies up top. And then I've got whether they're enabled or not enabled. And so like this one's enabled for reporting only mode. The others are enabled. It'll show disabled if it's a disabled policy. When it was created, the modified date and time. Who does it include? Like this block Lester from access to outside the internal network. It's just Lester William that's included, right? This helps in trying to just holistically see what all your policies are doing and how they're interacting with each other. Then just fundamentally, it's good documentation to have, right? So it's applying. So if you see this, it's applying to all target resources, right? You can pull this over like this. All client apps, includes all locations, right? It's excluding the test internal network. So that's the trusted IP. So you'd have to go back to, I couldn't figure out a way for it to print out all the trusted IPs. So you'll have to go back in to see what the trusted IPs are. And it's saying block that access, right? And so device authentication attacks, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but here's the policy that I have on that. It's enabled when it was created. It applies to everybody. It's all resources, all client types. It's doing a block, and it's got device code flow and authentication transfer blocked. So I think this should be very heavily useful. And so from my perspective, I think banks should be using this and running this periodically, but even more important, I would add a field here. I would add a field, and I would call it description, right? And then put in some description, right? So policy is intended to block all medium risk user behavior, right? And excludes Joe. I don't know. I'm just making it up, right? And if you need it to show up, you right click, do format cells, go to alignment, and do wrap text, right? And so I would do that. I think what a lot of banks are lacking, actually a lot of companies overall are lacking, is just this overall documentation. So one, if you're making changes, it's a good way to find errors. I will say it's not perfect. There are certain settings that won't get caught in here, so it's a starting point. But the main bulk settings should get caught through this. If you see, I have sign-in frequent. I have a bunch of these session controls. We're capturing authentication transfer. As I come up with new versions of this, we'll probably add them in as we go. So, all right. I don't know why people are. I shouldn't be letting anybody in. So, okay. So hopefully that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions on how to run that tool? I'll be honest with you. If there's nothing you got from this, that tool, I haven't seen anything like it out there. I think I saw a paid version of it out there. Definitely use it. I think you're going to find that it's very useful. Once you're done running it, you'll want to run this script. You'll want to take this script, this disconnect MSGraph, because what this has done is it's grabbed a session token in here. So now you're authenticated through PowerShell. You'll want to pop that in. Oh, I don't know what that just popped in there. So, sorry. Anyway, I'm not going to run it now because I'm running other scripts later, but you want to right-click, copy, and then copying it in there, right? So, oh, okay. Well, that was a mistake. So, also, I've got another text file. So unified audit logging, we've seen where breaches have happened and unified audit logging wasn't turned on. So we have this script here. It's called verify audit logging, which will generate a report. So again, open up the script, do Control A, right click and copy, open up PowerShell, run it as an administrator, so you can't run it as a non-administrator, and make sure you're a global admin in 365. This is connecting to Exchange Online. You'll see it's prompting me for authentication. I choose that. And now it's continuing on. And so I will say the other script should prompt you twice for authentication. And if it errors out, you just have to rerun it. So sometimes it errors out on the first time. And so this script disconnects you from the authentication. So like audit logging status. So my unified audit logging is true. So unified audit logging is turned on. And then by mailbox audit logging is on by default, but we're just doing a double check here, right? So you see it's enabled. It's on everyone's account, right? So you want to make sure that's turned on. And generally, if you're with a SIM provider, it's going to be turned on, but it's worthwhile checking. So PowerShell, we covered that. Below are some security settings that we'll be looking at. We talked about making that separate global admin account, the OnMicrosoft account. Blocking authentication flows. I'll just show how the policy gets set up. It's device authentication. So if I take a PowerShell script, I can run it and generate a 6-digit passcode, mimicking like a browser, as an example. And so I have gotten the comment that if we're blocking browser-based access outside the network, would that block this? And my answer is I haven't tested it yet, but likely yes. But thing is, this isn't going to affect anybody. I would go ahead and get it in place. And we're going to recommend that in audits that you get it in place. And so if we go out, if I get that 6-digit code and get someone to go to Microsoft.com/device login and enter that code and authenticate, I will get their session token and authenticate as them. So this is what that policy looks like. That link that's in there is instructions to it. You add all users, target resources, all cloud apps, conditions is where you choose. I don't think there's any conditions. Block access. Actually, where is that at? Yep, sorry. Conditions, it's authentication flows. Choose that. Say yes. Block device code flow. Authentication transfer is if you don't have granular controls over your mobile device access. That's where it'll give you a prompt saying, do you want to get your email on your mobile phone? And it'll give you a QR code to get it on your phone. You might as well block that authentication transfer now. Last year that was preview mode. It's full force now. I don't see why you wouldn't do that. It shouldn't break anything. So That's the device auth. Block authentication flows. These links should take you exactly to where you need to go. If you don't trust the links, you can definitely try to find it. But conditional access, so block user consent. So what the risk is there is I create an app on my tenant and I add one of you to my tenant, to my app as permissions to access my app. So now, by that very nature, I'm not necessarily going to breach and be able to read your email, but I can enumerate your entire domain, right? Your entire tenant. I can enumerate all the users in your tenant once I have that. And so you want to block user consent. So this takes you to that page, right? User consent settings say do not allow user consent. That's what we suggest. So the next one, block user ability to create app passwords. I think Microsoft is saying that if you have proper MFA conditional access policies in place, that should override this. Again, I don't know if it does or not. It's not a hard setting to check. So you go to users and service settings. We're assuming you're relying on just defaults that Microsoft says is not going to be appropriate. So this is where you say do not allow users to create app passwords to sign into non-browser apps, and then click save. The next one, block external domains to prevent unmanaged Teams users. So what this is someone breaches a vendor last couple of years. They breach a vendor of yours, they get into their Teams environment and start sending phishing attacks to you through Teams, right? The tightest way to do that, if you're not using Teams to chat with different vendors, is block all external domains. This won't block your ability to create Teams meetings. It will just block the ability for someone from the outside to send a Teams message to your users. So some of the other options are only allow only specific external domains, so you could essentially add domains and whitelist them. Block only. I don't see the point in just blocking only specific external domains. Block all. Yep. You want to change it from allow all to block all. I think I had it as block all. So block ability for users to share their calendars with people outside of your organization. So if I click on that, and I'm going to start rolling through this a little quicker. So I pull that up. Fortunately, that's not working. Okay. Oh, sorry. You go here to this, and then you go to org settings. Account. I apologize. This is coming up to something different. I don't know what that page is. Regardless, there's instructions there. Sorry, not to get too off track. Koshal may have put the wrong link in there. So, but basically, you have to go to your org settings. I think it should be on the admin portal. So I'm here at admin.microsoft.com. You go to settings, org settings, and you go to calendar, and you uncheck that, let your users share their calendar with people outside your organization, right? So the risk there is you see when someone's in office, when someone's out of office, when they're in a meeting, right? If someone's in IT, if I find out an IT admin is in a meeting, I can call users and try to execute an attack saying, I know Matt Loeb is in a meeting right now, right? So I'm dropping information that they might already know and then executing the attack from there, right? So if you click that, you have some other options there. Fundamentally, we just think you should limit that. You should turn that off. On this same screen, you can go to SharePoint. If you're not using SharePoint, then why leave it open, right? Or SharePoint. SharePoint, you can go into SharePoint. You can say only share information with people in your organization, right? Again, if you're an organization that's using SharePoint to send out files, you're going to do something different here. And so, but for most of our banks, you're not sharing files out through SharePoint to external users. So just limit that, change that, and save it. So that's the G. Number H, or letter H, is ensure users can register applications. You want to stop them from being able to register their own applications. You want to control that as an admin, so they can't just put random applications out there. So this is it here. So set that to no. Users can register applications. I don't know if we've seen anyone breach this necessarily. Restrict non-admin users from creating tenants. I think I would just click yes on that as well. So Exchange, so if someone's not on mute, can you go ahead and go on mute? Because it's creating some static there. So Exchange device, active quarantine. So if you've done our audits with us, you know where we keep talking about we want to see a manual approval process, right? And we've heard the comment back that, Exchange ActiveSync is being deprecated. So I can't necessarily explain. So this takes you to the mobile access page. You go to mobile device access. What you can do here is you can create edit. You click edit, click quarantine, put who you want to get notified when someone's trying to access email. It says EAS or whatever it is. There's a description that I found someplace that's saying, yes, ActiveSync is being disabled, but the underlying functionality of this quarantine device is not being disabled. I know it works right now. We suggest doing this so if a hacker gets access to email and breaks MFA, talks to a user and they give them the MFA code, and it's a new access point, you'll be able to grab that right here, right? You'll go into quarantine and an IT administrator has to allow it. So quarantine, put your IT's email in there, and then it'll show up on this page when it's quarantined. It'll send an alert to IT when that happens. To remove access, you'd actually go, so if you are using this, I've got this mobile device access script here that you can run. Again, here. So again, right click, copy, go out here, right click in there, and it'll run it. It'll authenticate you. And it'll run, it'll create wherever that's allowed, right? So I've kind of set something up so something shows up in here. Right, so that'll create another report, right? So it's called Device Access Report. So you'll be able to see, okay, Koshal Guattari has Outlook on his phone, right? If you want to remove it, without going to remove access, right, you go to the Exchange mailbox itself, click on the user, you go to Manage Mobile Devices, and then you can remove it from here. You choose the device and click Block Access. So hopefully that makes sense. And so even if you're using Intune enrollment, this works. This quarantine process works. I know we keep talking, MSPs keep coming back and saying it doesn't work. I'm saying it does. We've seen it work. You can do both. You can force Intune enrollment, and then when it tries to access email, you can put the manual quarantine process in place. The big question that's been out there is that going away? And from what I'm understanding, that portion is not going away. So, but let's say you decide not to do the quarantine, right? Whether you're doing this or not, you're going to see me emphasize we should have some type of oversight over M365. And that means sending your Microsoft 365 logs to some type of SIM or similar solution, right? Once you're doing that, you should talk to the provider and get an alert for all new Intune enrollments, right? Or all new access to email, essentially, right? All new Intune enrollments. That way, you can at least, if somebody is getting a new Intune enrollment on a device and you didn't know about it as IT, you can step in and say, wait a minute, what's going on there? There is a workaround. So Seth Irby, he's kind of who I go to. He's the expert that we talk to quite a bit. He does Copilot reviews, so if you're ever interested, contact him. But he's going to put a video together. Essentially, Intune allows you to alert the actual user themselves of an Intune enrollment. So if you don't have the SIM and the capability of doing it through that, then you can have it alert the user and then set up a mail flow rule to forward that specific subject line to IT. So there's a very manual workaround that's available. Automatic forwarding to external domains, we do suggest blocking that. So hackers, when they get into an account for the first time, they'll set up where to forward emails to. So you go into this page, you choose the default account, click Edit Reply Types, and uncheck, this will be checked by default. So you uncheck Allow Automatic Forwarding, right? So the others, that's up to you, right? Allow automatic replies. I don't allow automatic replies, so, but we're unchecking automatic forwarding there. So that's one way to control it at a global level. It's to prevent a hacker from forwarding stuff to their Gmail account or whatever. On the flip side, it does start to prevent your users from doing that. So if you have anybody that needs to do that, then you'll have to find it. There's a different way to do this where you can do it by mailbox. I'm not going to cover this right now. Not necessarily a catch-all email address. So, like, I have kkatari@sgcsecure.com, Terry at sgcsecure, Ashley, Dylan at sgcsecure, right? Lynn at sgcsecure. We've got their names, their actual email accounts, and their actual accounts. But if someone sends an email and they spell my name wrong, kkatari, just Katari at sgcsecure, I've created a catch-all account. These are instructions on how to create that. You go out to this, you create a transport rule. And I actually just specified how to do that. The problem is it's very, very manual. So when you get out here, you know, you would have to add it as a step, right? That when you create a new user, you add them into here or change the logic in there somehow. But essentially, I don't have to specify an inbox for info at. Info at's always going to come to me as the admin. And that's how I specified it there. Block sign-in for shared mailboxes. I did include a script here called shared mailboxes. I don't know if I have any. I think I put a test out there, right? So by default, shared mailboxes are blocked, but this is just, you should verify if they're blocked or not. So right-click, run that script, authenticate. Once it's done, it'll give you a report, right? That shows shared mailboxes report when that comes up. So I don't have any shared mailboxes, but if you did have a shared mailbox, really, there should be nobody signed. There's no good reason why anyone's, sorry, there are reasons, but there's legitimately most banks shouldn't have a need to actually sign into the shared mailbox. It should be delegated out to whoever needs access to that shared mailbox. So, couple other things, and I didn't go over those. I think we're kind of running short on time here. So for global admin accounts, we do have recommendations out there. Sorry. Okay, so for global admin accounts, fundamentally we want to see those restricted, right? Implement IP restriction for access to global admin accounts. So you create a conditional access policy or add it to one that exists for admins already. And limit it to the network support vendors' trusted IPs and the bank's trusted IPs. So that does make it so that if neither are available, you can't get a hold of it. But, you know, put your disaster recovery IPs in there. Limit it so someone outside can't get access to a global admin account. 2 medium risk recommendations that will be, or things that we'll be looking at: configure session limits for global admins to 4 hours or less, and disable persistent browser sessions. So you would do that through sessions. Okay. A lot of screens open. So I think sessions here. Yep, persistent browser session. You would change that to never persistent. Sign-in frequency, you would change that to, 4 or whatever, right? Select units, hours, right? So that's if someone does get access, it's not going to be persistent access and it'll come out of there. One note, when you do go to a user, you go to a user to revoke all sessions. I have tested this, the timing it takes, and it just depends on the account, right? But when you click on there and revoke sessions, generally speaking, it should take up to 10 minutes to revoke all sessions. I'm finding that it's happening pretty rapidly right now, but actually it could take up to an hour. When you revoke all sessions, it's revoking the refresh token. It's not necessarily revoking the session itself. So the next time the session goes to check in, it will see the refresh token has been invalidated. And so that's where it will reprompt for authentication. So just know that you do have some exposure after hitting revoke sessions. Any security change or conditional access policy change, I applaud all the vendors on here. You might have it in place. I don't know if you do. Just make sure as a bank that when a conditional access policy is changed, you get that alert. And if the SIM provider comes back to you and says, we can't do that as an alert, but we can do it as a daily report or a monthly report, start looking for a new SIM. There's zero reason why they can't notify you right away, and it's not going to be alert fatigue. Those conditional access policies should not be changing that often. So, glass break accounts, so different views on glass break accounts. For some, a glass break account would be a full global admin and only username and password, which is stored somewhere secure and excluded from all conditional access policies, and ideally changed each time it's used. Right? Our recommendation in this case is to ensure and test that there's an alert each time that that global admin account is accessed in any way, and then ensure it's changed as needed. Right? So if it's accessed, change the password, but get the alert that the glass break account is accessed, because in this case you wouldn't have MFA or anything on there. It'd be excluded from all policies. One step you could take to tighten that down with that global access account, global admin account, is IP restricted through a conditional access policy. Our preference is actually that the glass break account has MFA. You can do multiple forms of MFA and IP restricted, but however you choose, really, especially if it's a glass break account with no other controls around it, you need to get an alert. You want to make sure of it. So I would say not just make sure, not just open a ticket and ask if it's being done. I would say go ahead and access the account. Ask for proof of it. Access the account, get the alert yourself, and then document that you got that alert as one of your incident response activities for the year. So, but you should be testing and verifying that. Last thing you want is a hacker to get access to that global admin account, and you're not knowing about it until they breached your entire bank's tenant. Microsoft 365 oversight. Every bank should be looking to get some form of Microsoft 365 oversight. So you're going to want to get some type of oversight. So just like we said, you need a SIM or similar solution or tool to capture logs and alert or take actions as necessary. Just what we talked about there, anytime a conditional access policy or security setting is changed, it's a common mistake that can lead to breaches. Someone gets in and changes the conditional access policy for whatever reason, they add an exclude in there, or they turn it off, or put it into report only mode. It's just a recipe for disaster, right? And they don't turn it back on. You need an alert and someone to follow up on it. All new device enrollments, mobile devices, indicators of MFA bypass attacks. So if we looked at an MFA bypass attack as an example that I have, right? What you would see is it's the exact same session, logging in from here, like in Des Moines, versus Newark, New Jersey, right? It's the exact same session. It's an impossible travel deal, right? It should be flagged. If forwarding is allowed, then in a perfect world, you should get alerting when forwarding to external domains is added to someone's account and research it. Access to a Glass Break account should generate an alert. These are just examples. It's not an exhaustive list in any way. Work with your SIM provider to get the alerts. And if you don't have a SIM monitoring the 365 environment, it should be on the top of your priority list to getting something to monitor Microsoft 365. Right? You don't need a change out there. You don't need things done out there. You don't need email accounts hacked. Like I said before, I think I said earlier, a lot of the banks don't have retention policies in place. I've seen where banks have tried to put retention policies in place, and then users got upset, and eventually it turned into, well, we're going to have to remove retention policies. 2 years is kind of the guideline I go by, but like I said, I don't think we see retention policies often. But hacker gets into that email account and they potentially have access to data from 2013 and earlier in there. So hopefully running these scripts makes sense. Again, make sure when you run it and you open up PowerShell, make sure you open up PowerShell and run as admin. So PowerShell 7, run as administrator. And then when you get it, just copy the stuff in and you should be able to get all these reports. But this one should be, I think everybody on the call, if you ran this report, should find this beneficial. It's one way just to see what's going on in here. So, in my case, it looks like sometimes the script won't catch certain things, so you'll have to investigate what that ID is for, right? But sometimes it catches it, sometimes it doesn't. So, like I said, it's not a perfect script, but it's pretty darn good.